been a while since I seen that. So what's going on in here?
Is this video gonna be dark?
Maybe you've seen that, maybe not. So what's with the do-over? Well, people keep watching this, which would be excellent, except that it has some problems. The sound could be better, maybe. See? Okay, I got it. All right, Jesus. This sounds like the backing track of a Chinese life hacks video on TikTok. Well, I wish you were wrong, but I know. So I could fix the sound, could fix the levels, but that wouldn't fix the rest of the problems that I have with the video. My God, I mean, I animated it in Photoshop. It was my 6th video, and this is now something like my 30th. So we got new production, new script, new levels. Plus, most importantly, it actually smoothed over Lacan's theory a bit too much because I didn't yet know my audience, or rather I didn't yet have an audience. So thanks for your feedback. Here is my response done properly. New and improved Redux, Lacan, social media, media, image, and I. Bye-bye. It's a non-ideal I. Redux.
Je dis toujours la vérité.
All right, levels. See, I can learn. To be a subject is to be you, sometimes. And what makes you you, and depending on who's theorizing, that might be nature, God, your mind, or your brain. Although it is derived from some particular locus or arrangement of causes, it's also affected by your interactions with the world, other people, and unbeknownst to you, by your unconscious desire. Table of contents, let's go. 1, desire. Philosophers for a long time have known that behavior is motivated by desire, and also that other people or society can deceive you about what you actually desire or what's good for you. But Freud comes along and says for the first time that you deceive yourself about what you desire. Desire is largely unconscious, and the purpose of consciousness is to repress desire, at least those desires that you can't act upon. That which you don't know you desire is structured by others, the other, so that you can get along with everyone and, not get castrated. Relationships, personal fulfillment, social status, these are acceptable forms of more primal desires, like Freud's whole Oedipal thing, or fundamentally, not being nothing. Not being nothing. Not being nothing. And all these things are outside of you, so as a subject, you can't be satisfied by your own agency alone. You gotta go out into the world to find stuff to help you be yourself. So here's a little bit of an experiment. Here's a blank screen. Screens are a really useful analogy for psychoanalysis because you can both project onto them and at the same time they double as filters, keeping something out while something else passes through. The screen is a structure of desire in a lot of cases. So here's an experiment. Stop for a second and imagine, visualize. What do you desire? What do you hope for that you don't now have? What would make you more yourself? A new relationship, a more fulfilling job, a journey, more influence over other people, or to act on your bad impulses less often, a better rank in. Now within this imaginary that I've given you, you imagine yourself as more yourself, either 5 minutes in the future or 5 years, and the blank screen where you're projecting your desire is you. Desire is something in us that always points outside to those things that you imagine would make you more yourself if you had them.
You have several stories that you like to tell over and over and over and over.
Oh, that's not, come on, that's a lie.
Now, in a more Lacanian specific sense, what you imagine yourself to be is a cleaned up, socially acceptable, worthy image, which is mixed up with all your fantasies about a version of you that doesn't really exist.
All right, I don't have to tell stories.
What do you think would happen if you didn't tell the stories? Are you being yourself?
How am I not myself?
Here's the spoiler, tragically. You're never gonna be yourself.
How am I not myself?
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 So while you're identifying yourself with your images of yourself, they aren't you, and the you also knows that it's never yet you as a coherent being. Otherwise, it wouldn't be desiring. Desire is always outside. So it's what's called a negation that makes the rest of you coherent-ish. Now, I know you're ready for the graphics up in here, so here it is. You may know Lacan's formula here by the signifier objet a, the object of desire. Or check this out, the non-object of desire. So as you're going around, desire is part of the screen. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Whenever you get close to acquiring whatever it was that you signified as desire, then shifts onto a new projection. In psychoanalysis, this is fundamental to being a person. We imagine ourselves with the other things that we hope and strive for. For Lacan, desire is like an object that changes forms inside you, but fluctuating to mimic the forms of things outside you over which you don't actually have any agency or control. Damn. So whatever images you put into these categories, fulfillment, coherence, to get famous, or just to have a better car, or rather to be seen in a better car, desire functions like an object where it's really the lack of an object, not in the world, but in you. To be a subject is to constantly imagine yourself as more yourself, as something that you are not now. And these images build up an image of yourself as an ideal, but they are alien, an alien shell with nothing inside it. And as you come to identify yourself with that alien shell, when someone else is looking at you, you're stuck in a loop. In Écrit, Lacan calls this the armor of an alienating identity. But this shell you've put on is not perfect either, and you're not really convinced of its reality. And what you really are returns in neurotic symptoms from your unconscious. You can notice symptoms especially in like bad social habits, for example. So, check this out. As soon as the subject himself comes to be, he owes it to a certain non-being on which he raises his being. And if he isn't something, he obviously bears witness to some kind of absence, but he will always remain purveyor of this absence. So this means that you kind of know deep down that you're never really going to be yourself. There's always this desire-shaped hole negating your consistency. Always. The reason we're stuck in a desire loop philosophically is that we're not complete, but open subjects without coherent identity. If you were complete, you wouldn't be neurotic about not being yourself or not being properly seen as yourself. But everyone maintains a fantasy of getting there. In psychoanalysis, desire is lack. It's fundamental. Because obviously, you wouldn't be desiring something if you already had it. But desire is also unconscious, so you never really know what it is that really structures your striving, reactions, and other symptoms. And in the meantime, your images of yourself occupy a space. Desire is a part of you that always points outside to something that you don't have. So what's not you is a fundamental part of you. And, you only stop desiring when you're dead. So Lacan follows Freud in that there's this gap between what you think you are and what you aren't, or image versus desire. And there's disruptions, impediments, stumblings, symptoms. This comes out in behavior and is why people habitually seem to screw up in the same way over and over again. The purpose of the analyst is to serve as this outside seer by which you figure out the gap between what you think you're doing and what you're actually acting out over and over again. However, that gap never goes away, but advertising and celebrity fantasy don't want you to know that. Celebrity gives us the image of completed desire, which is why it takes over every screen. That everything we think we want, money, luxury, but most of all, the endless adoration just for your talents or just for who you are whenever you want it. That is, you can possess the desire of others, qua celebrity, and the desire of others fits you into what's called the dialectic of recognition. There's this shock, endless incredulity, the question why when some celebrity kills themselves. Because they have everything that anyone could want to really, finally be yourself. What more could you want? And that's the image, of course, but it's contradicted by what desire actually is, or more properly, what desire isn't, because there's a gap there as a consequence of being a subject. And in the case of the celebrity in particular, even if everyone recognizes you, the problem is that you really can't ever actually possess the desire of others because it isn't something. It's a negation or lack in them that can't fundamentally fill up the negation or lack in you. You can't fill up a negation with a negation. So whether or not everybody knows your name, you're never going to get the thing that you want. The unconscious is always manifested as that which vacillates in a split in the subject. So here's the tragic point at the heart of Lacan's theory of subjectivity. You can never be yourself, and you can never get the thing that you want. Except as a fiction, right? It's a useful fiction that can get you through most days, but still a fiction. Move, contents. Now, part of yourself as subject is absent, elsewhere elusive, yet there's a ton of societal pressure to
be yourself.
This is a constant messaging in kids' movies, advertising, music. And in our mediated imaginary, you produce yourself by consuming. There's an injunction, a law, to be yourself. And consumption expresses who you are, and you're at your best when you are who you are. Shine your light, be brave, be true to yourself, blah, blah, blah. This is where the imaginary characters, celebrities, influencers, all exhibit how good everybody is at being themselves in this big show masquerade.
How am I not myself?
Now, for all the reasons that I've already went over, Lacan said you can't be yourself, especially in front of people, but not even when you're alone. So this whole Instagram beauty, fitness, fashion, lifestyle, popularity morass is silly. There's no need for me to rant about it, but the law to be yourself is already a law in subjectivity. It's a law by use of language, one that originally causes neuroses and dissatisfaction with yourself that you have to identify with a thing, like the name I. Now, this aspect of experience becoming linguistic, that of identification with a form, is pretty easy to see on display in social media. This is one of the easiest ways to your brain, so it's useful for advertisers. Beauty, fitness, fashion, lifestyle, which exhibit images of your value or your coherence. These in turn become the projections of those who see them, their desire, and in Lacanian analysis, this whole thing together can be called the imaginary. It's part of the imaginary, it's not actually the whole thing. It's the most useful example for this video. So in Lacanian psychoanalysis, there's 3 registers of experience that kind of line up with his writings: the imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. The imaginary, this one, is constituted by identities and images, and is the least mediated register of experience, which is why advertisers can use it to appeal to your most basic desires. It's not called the imaginary because it's pretend, but rather that it's image-based. So dreams are made up of images. They're pictures, they have coherent identities, even if they change. Things with forms and outline. So, for example, this is a girl. Moving down, second, this is the symbolic register of language, signs, codes, where identities are not only themselves, but they also defer to other meanings. That's where, we get codes of propriety that are established and enforced, self-enforced. If you see a girl and the girl's on a door and you're a boy, you must not go into it. The injunction, the law to be yourself, speaks to a more subtle universal truth. Even language, using the word I as a speaking subject, forces you to play a subject. And in saying you're a subject, there's a bit of wordplay that happens here, that the subject in the philosophical tradition and the subject of a sentence are both kind of the same thing. The subject in psychoanalysis also has another side to it, a real side that's non-linguistic. So, real. The real's the non-space, The real's like the absent space that the other two here are meant to build up so that you don't have to encounter it. It's the reason for the screen. It's unmediated, and you spend most of your life pretending that it doesn't exist because encountering it means you temporarily blow up the whole rest of your carefully constructed organization, which makes it really hard to live until you piece it back together. The real is the source of anxiety, transference, and every other neurotic adaptation. It was Nietzsche who said something like, when you stare into the abyss, then the abyss stares back. And that realization that the abyss is staring back, that is the real. So let's just avoid the real, as we're prone to do anyway. But if you're really interested in that and you're, set for a little bit of a psychic breakdown, you can watch my video on it. For now, we will be content to just gaze upon the imaginary. The imaginary is image-based, the word's in there. It's not visual as in the sense of light, though, per se. It's just the closest correlate or analogy if we want to talk about the psychic structure of the imaginary. So it's the least mediated in that meanings don't defer to social rules or codes, per se. Happy person eating a burger means that the source of person's happiness is burger. Advertising works, easy. We're now talking about how you respond to and internalize images. Images like dignified versus savage, paternal versus subversive. And these images are draped in fantasy. Now, advertising, whether it's corporate or, Instagram advertising, is desire in the imaginary sense. Desire comes back here and just moves around, projecting your future self or creating an ideal I out of a world of these images. Your ideal I, the thing that you think you are, is always a fiction, however. You see yourself as if within someone else's gaze, wanting to be seen in the imaginary in the same way that you see others. Back to celebrities, how you see them, that's how you want to see yourself. Now here's an example of being inculcated into this imaginary of others. You see kids doing this. They sing in front of the mirror as if they're in a stadium, or celebrating as if in an arena when they score even while playing alone. Early in life, your fictional self is sucked into the imaginary world of signification. The screen is in your mind. So you're not a subject when you're born. Babies don't desire fulfillment and social status because they can't signify. That's similarly why animals are not subjects in the Lacanian sense. You have to learn through images, language, social interactions, what to desire. So we gotta ask, since we've been working up to it, where did this hole at the center of subjectivity come from? Why is it there? For Lacan, as is well known, there's a point when you're a toddler called the mirror stage. Simply put, this is the moment when you recognize your reflection in the mirror as you, as yourself. Seems rather innocuous, right? But not for Lacan. The mirror stage is a fundamental but tragic moment because you identify yourself with what's not really you. This misidentification, first in the mirror and then in language, is the root cause of all the anxiety you will experience for the rest of your life. Anxiety in psychoanalysis is not something like anxiety disorder. It's a general and fundamental symptom of being a subject. in particular, because you can never actually get the thing that you desire. Anxiety is normal, particularly in an imaginary that is endlessly telling you to be yourself, which you can't follow through with. So why is this moment such a big deal? Well, something happens in the mirror stage. For the first time, you see yourself in the mirror as an enclosed form, as one coherent thing, encased in that alien shell. What is being encased though? That's the real question, because it's both you and not you. It's the desire of a split subject. To notice the misrecognition here, think of your experience before you see yourself in the mirror, a pre-mirror toddler. In your peripheral vision, you might see some hands waving around, your feet maybe. Then you have different sensations coming in from all over your body. Sensations you can't yet place. There's a voice that comes out of you from somewhere, and when you yell, the great warm mass you'll eventually call your mother appears to feed you. Now, none of these sensations, sounds, images, the hands out of the sides of your eyes, actually add up to a thing. It's a multiplicity, a bunch of things that you don't know has a coherence. So there's not yet a coherent individual, and that's what the mirror does, because in the mirror, you come to see yourself as an object, a single form. But your desire, unlike objects, which don't desire, you can experience your desire in that form. The mirror is outside of you as an infant. You now have an externalized image of yourself as an object alongside other objects that make up the world, your blankets, your balls, bottles, and so on. Yet, you also have an internal experience that is diametrically opposed to that form. Objects are constituted by the parts and qualities that make them up, while subjects are constituted by what does not make them up. Your desire does not show up in the mirror, even though those other objects do. So you, qua subject, are caught in an irreconcilable paradox. You see and imagine yourself as a thing, yet you can never be a thing. And the not you is still a fundamental part of you. This is a fundamental misrecognition, or what in French is called méconnaissance, a misknowing that you're stuck in from then on. And there's some wordplay here. Self-knowledge. Méconnaissance is misrecognizing. Je me connais is to know myself, and then this méconnaissance, sounds the same, is misrecognition. So to know yourself is always to misrecognize. We are never in fact ourselves, but an arrangement of the inside, the outside, the self, desire, and of subject versus thing. One of the illustrative examples of Lacan of this misrecognition, for example, is when you attach sexual desire to objects. For example, when a man has a fetish for women's shoes. He has transferred desire onto an object. But the shoe fetish is the same function as all advertising. The commodity is magically imbued with happiness and fulfillment. Prior to the mirror stage, you're scattered throughout various sensory elements, your feet, hands, voice, sensations, and none of them condense into a single unity. Your reflection in the mirror now creates an imaginary unity, a form with a clearly defined outline, and this misrecognition all happens even before we acquire language. But then, when we do acquire language, the problem gets even worse because now you become the subject of the sentence. You learn the word I. And I puts yourself in a sentence alongside with all the other signifiers and reference. I want that bottle. But that bottle isn't split by its unconscious desire. That's only you. Yet now for the rest of your life, you're signifying yourself just the same way as you signify objects. There's another use or function that we also get from this ideal I. The ideal I is fictional, obviously. It's a fictional unity, but non-castrated in the Freudian arrangement. But for Lacan, the castration is algebraic, an object of desire that is taken away elsewhere outside. The I that you can never utter to fully enclose yourself. So this is why this ideal I becomes the alien shell, always at a distance, with something else missing. Great. Now you have, first, your fictional self-image, your alien shell. And now two, you have a word attached to it to make it even seem more coherent than it's not. Just like the bottle, for the word bottle becomes bottle. Bottle is fixed, though. And you're not fixed because your desire is elsewhere. But you want to be yourself. You desire that because that would mean that you're no longer anxious. The notion of a stable ego presupposes incorrectly that there are fixed consciousnesses from which social arrangements are made. Lacan does hold out for a limited sense of individual subjectivity in the uniqueness of egos, because there are patterns of continuity. There's not, however, an independent subject with particular agency that can be properly signified as self-coherent. Otherwise, we wouldn't have neuroses. Here's the big quotation from the mirror stage, kind of grounds the whole thing so far. The important point is that this form, the ideal I in the mirror, situates the agency of the ego before its social determination in a fictional direction, which will always remain irreducible for the individual. There it is. Yes, the unity of all these desires, images is a fiction, and this fiction is constructed during the mirror stage and through linguistic acquisition very early in life, before you even start following the rules. The fiction that you have to believe in, it's your reality, whether you like it or not. Now that it's your reality, the rest of your life is trying tragically to catch up with it, catch up with the I. And this is the reason it's so difficult to ever be happy with what you are and what you have, because you're always chasing a ghost. All right, and finally, the masquerade, where this whole pool of images where everything cashes out and makes you even more unhappy than you would have been without. There's a mirror you and an ideal I distinct from you. But look at where the desire's at. That's why nothing will alleviate your anxiety, because the gap is complete. The imaginary in psychoanalysis is about identities, and identities are enclosed boundaries. What ancient philosophers would have called forms. Forms are complete. They have names, and they might be made up of different parts, sure, but they become one thing, an image thing. Now, the imaginary is made up of objects and forms like these, or at least apparent objects and forms that drag around you. But you also drag around the missing piece, the object of desire. So celebrity is misrecognized as a coherence in the same way that you misrecognize yourself as an object image in the mirror stage. These are anxious subjects trying to be people, trying to turn themselves into ideal eyes, and to be seen as complete unities alongside all other objects, including all these other people. So you gotta be happy because the image is happy. But not being the image is the thing that's not making you happy. Whew. Looks happy, looks happy. They aren't. No happier than you. That's the fiction. The fiction we still believe. Now, here's what we call the gaze. You're desiring to be seen in the gaze, the visual field, because you apparently become coherent there. Now, Lacan here is drawing on Sartre's phenomenology in the concept of the gaze, and there's actually a lot more to be said about that exceeds this narrow formula. That's for another time, though. Lacan extends it to show that the function of the gaze is to externally construct yourself as if someone was looking at you from the outside. I see only from one point, but in my existence, I am looked at from all sides. We are beings who are looked at in the spectacle of the world. That's cool, because there's a little Merleau-Ponty reference in there. Stay tuned to this channel because he's going to come up. So remember those kids, the kids in front of the imaginary crowds in their heads? That imaginary crowd is who is watching you as an adult too, all the time. The gaze of others, or to say the same thing, the desire of others that makes you up as a subject, as a failed attempt to turn yourself into a complete thing. The you, though, the you've been structured from the outside in a whole bunch of imaginary or symbolic relations. All right, are we making sense? Hope so. It's a little tougher than last time, but think of it this way. We believe that things exist because we see them mainly. So wanting others to see us is a way of existing without anxiety because we know objects don't have anxiety. But the desire in this arrangement of being seen originates in you, not from out there. So the others, the imaginary others, the big others, become part of you from the mirror stage onward, the imaginary crowd that you can't get away from, even when you're alone. Now, the reason I bring up social media as a good example of this is that it's concretized. Social media makes it concrete in that it's quantified, and being seen now is reflected by the number of likes and views you can seduce from the masses. Like and view. Thank you. It's going to inflate my ideal I to the sense of becoming real. Unfortunately, you're never actually seen because the imaginary crowd is in you, not out there. The extreme example of this is the paranoiac. The paranoiac believes everyone is watching him all the time, even though this is not the case, but they've transferred the imaginary crowd into their actual experience as if they were actual people. But no, even in personal relationships, it is your image that is seen, an image draped in the other's fantasy, an alien shell that you know deep down is not you. Online then, that double, your profile pic, your gallery, your products, it can never be you because it doesn't have the desire in it that makes you you. And desire can't be made into the image. It's a formless object with a referent that's always fluctuating and moves immediately when you acquire whatever it was you were just desiring. Realizing that you're not who you want to be, now you got this social media tool to make you the you that you desire to be. Usually this is adventurous, well-liked, attractive, and most importantly, seen as desirable by others. And look at the tragic logic here. Your desires, first of all, what makes you incomplete. Yet you desire the desire of others, which is what makes them incomplete. Or again, desire is the emptiness at the center of subjects, the lack of completeness that makes us need things like relationships, careers, lifestyles, or whatever we designate ourselves as missing. So what you're really wanting from other people is a missing substance, a negation, and an absence in order to fill the absence in you. This will obviously never solve the fundamental problem in yourself and can never be resolved. That's real. Wanting to be famous for its own sake will always end in total disaster, even though that's advertised as an end in itself. The gaze of no one in particular, the imaginary crowd, is what you've already projected into yourself since the mirror stage. So your media image is now the mirror of a mirror. And everyone has the technology to try to complete themselves as subjects, celebrities, and newsflash, that won't work. Celebrities are about as anxious as you are. And this is why, though, the loop's never ending. It orbits the event horizon of an interminable fundamental lack at the center of subjectivity. But this is what keeps the whole spectacular masquerade going. There's more desire to be accrued at all times. There's always more virtual images to post, always an excess of desire. It's a problem without a solution, which is what makes it profitable, because people will keep buying something that's always out of reach. Problems without solutions are always the most profitable kind. Lacan gives us a sort of rubric to understand the function of the image and the form in an online environment where both the imaginary and desire run rampant and unchecked. This masquerade offers temporary fixes for what's the problem of being subjects. This is not to say there is a solution, however, but crafting a lifestyle based on superficial desires like clothes, getting thin, or getting rich is for sure not going to produce success. Damn, that was heavy. For the second time, still heavy. I'm Plastic Pills, my ideal I, given coherence only by the gaze of others. These others, in fact, who like this sort of content on YouTube instead of, this sort of content. Thanks very much. Okay, later.